Hello everybody, my name is Kevin and welcome back to another album review, where today I'm talking about the fourth album from Pink Floyd, Ummagumma, or Ummagumma, depending on how you pronounce it. Alright, I've been pretty excited to cover this one. This is the second album that Pink Floyd released in 1969. Originally wanting to release a full-on live album, they instead released a half-live album and a half-studio album with this. And just so you know, for my ranking of the album, I'm only counting the studio disc. Counting the live disc kind of feels like cheating, as you can listen to both separately and have completely different experiences, which is what I did today for my review of this album. Not to take away from the live disc, because it's amazing. I really do love these versions of Astronomy, Domine, and Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. They bring a lot of energy. And this version of A Saucer Full of Secrets is also pretty good. And of course, you also get Careful with That Axe, Eugene. Probably the best performance of this song I've ever heard. So yeah, the live disc on this album is freaking great. As for the studio disc, this is the most experimental album that Pink Floyd have ever made. Just warning you, right off the bat. The last three albums had some kind of experimental music, but this one goes all out with it. Every single member has their own compositions, and they do them completely alone, except for Nick Mason, but we'll get to him. And yeah, it all results in an absolutely chaotic, absolutely very strange album that is honestly really good. The thing is, I actually like experimental music like this. If you could do something clever with this whole thing about making some new ideas while also being weird with it, then I will enjoy it no matter what. As I said, every single member of the band gets their own composition, and on those compositions they play every instrument. For example, the opening composition, Sysyphus, that is credited solely to Richard Wright, where he plays all synthesizers, organs, pianos, and also the drums. So yeah, let's get into that one, shall we? Part 1 of the track is just a big epic overture that sets you up for what you're about to hear, not just this composition, but also like the entire album. And then that transitions into part 2, where Rick plays some really good little classical piano melodies, which then devolves into complete chaos by the halfway mark. And it honestly sounds really amazing. I kind of love that part. Part 3 is probably the most annoying part of the album, aside from what Roger Waters is about to do in a few tracks' time, but we'll get to that. Part 3 is basically just pianos and random drums, and Rick doing some really over-the-top animal impressions, which are creepy but also really annoying. And honestly, I don't really enjoy this part. It's kind of annoying, as I said. But then we get to part 4, which is kind of a two-parter. The first half of part 4 is this really mellow part where there's a lot of like calming organ melodies with some occasional background noises like birds and water flowing, and then it fades out and you feel like you're about to fall asleep, and then suddenly getting completely jump scared by the second half, and then going into an absolutely insane section with insane synthesizer, organ, and piano noises that will haunt you for the rest of your life probably, and then finally ending with the reprise of the melody from part 1. Like, good lord, what a way to end a composition like this. Amazing. Then we get 2 Roger Waters compositions. The first, Grantchester Meadows, is just a nice little acoustic piece. Really mellow, really beautiful, with some bird sound effects in the background throughout the whole track. And honestly, listening to this track right after part 4 of Sysyphus is just absolutely insane. Like, you've just gotten out of that insane synthesizer experience, and now you're here listening to Waters talking about a dreamlike sequence in the titular place. I really do enjoy this track, and at the end you hear a fly buzzing, and then you hear a person swatting it with a newspaper or something. And then that transitions into the second Roger Waters piece, which is called Several Species of Small Furry Animals Gathered Together in a Cave and Grooving with a Pict. I learned that without even having to read it. And this track is basically just 5 minutes of Roger Waters making all kinds of animal noises with his own mouth, and by the end going into an going into the spoken word part where he does this over-the-top Scottish accent. It sounds weird, I know, and there are no musical instruments on this track whatsoever, making it the only Pink Floyd composition to, you know, not have any instruments. It's just Waters' voice and a bunch of tape manipulations and overdubbing, which he used to, you know, to speed up those animal impressions that he was doing, and then also, you know, combine them into a big collage of just whatever the hell he wanted. There's all kinds of bird noises and rodent noises, and also tapping the microphone to make it sound like they're running. And then at the end he does this weird spoken word thing with an over-the-top Scottish accent, which is honestly kind of entertaining. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't exactly call it one of my favorites, but you ought to listen to this track at least once before you die. This is a very strange track, I know, but I love it for that. It's so weird. Now, Waters' contributions to this album might be the weirdest and most memorable, and Wright's composition may be the creepiest on the entire record, but let's not take away from Gilmour and Mason's composition. They're probably the most interesting on the record. Gilmour's composition, The Narrow Way, is a three-parter. The first part is this little acoustic piece, which is always welcome. It's really nice. Part 2 is a more electric piece, which is also kind of creepy and pretty haunting, but also kind of groovy. And then part 3 is the only part of the track where it has actual lyrics. And it's also a pretty soothing track, if only a bit creepy. But it's really soothing, it's really nice. I mean, yeah, I really do love The Narrow Way. It's probably my favorite moment on the entire record, actually, but yeah, as I said, I love it. I kind of wanted The Narrow Way to be the album's ending, because part 3 just feels like the ending of the album. But instead, we end with Mason's composition, The Grand Vizier's Garden Party. This song is also divided into 3 sections, entrance, entertainment, and exit. Entrance starts out with Mason's wife, Lindy, playing flute, and then Mason playing a drum roll, which then transitions into entertainment, which is basically a 7-minute drum solo. Mason shows a bunch of things on his drums, like how he can pitch them up and down, how he can play them. There's all kinds of drums. My favorites are probably the kettle drums and cowbells. And he also plays some pretty creepy mellotron over some parts. And he does all kinds of weird, like, you know, playing on these drums. And it sounds pretty weird and honestly kind of entertaining. That's why it's called entertainment, honestly. And yeah, it's very interesting to hear all this. And at the last minute, he just plays like an actual kind of drum solo. And then Exit is also just Mason's wife Lindy playing flutes again for the album's ending. I'm not sure how this track fits as an ending, because honestly I think The Narrow Way would have been better, but the entertainment section of The Grand Vizier's Garden Party is amazing. I really do like that section, and it's probably the most interesting thing on the entire record. I'll say that honestly. So yeah, that's Ummagumma. It's creepy and weird. It's hilarious and interesting. It's the best kind of experimental music, what can I tell you? And the fact that they managed to do all this so well is just beyond me. So yeah, I really do enjoy the studio half of this record. I also do enjoy the live version a lot, the live disc. But yeah, the studio disc of this album is, as I said, it's really entertaining and interesting to listen to. You ought to hear it at least once in your lifetime. And I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, and if you have any opinions, you can leave them in the comments. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm Kev from Pest, and you've just learned a bit more about music today.